All right, welcome back to SportsLine, everybody. Jon Burton with you. 737-7767 is the number to call, with you until the top of the hour. As I said at the top of the show, ESPN, they do a great job with their 30 for 30 documentaries. In my opinion, one of the few things they still do pretty well over there at the Four-Letter Network. One's coming out tomorrow night. It's called Mike and the Mad Dog, and it tells the story of WFAN radio and how it began and really opened up the genre of 24-hour sports talk radio that we know today. Without that station and without the two guys that are centered around the documentary, Mike Francesa and Chris Russo, I don't know if we'd be doing a SportsLine show. I don't know if we'd have local sports talk radio here in Nashville and other parts of the country. And I want to bring in a good buddy of mine. We used to work together at 93.7 The Fan. He's one of the most talented guys in sports talk radio. He's the host of co-host of Gio and Jones on CBS Sports Radio, nationally syndicated radio program. Again, we used to work together in Pittsburgh. And he used to work at WFAN, and he knew Mike and Chris very well, worked with them, produced for them, knows them about as well as anybody in the business. Greg, it's great to have you on. Gregg Giannotti, how are you, buddy?
I'm doing great. It's my pleasure, John. It's great to hear your voice.
Greg, you know, I love living here in the South. I'm having a ball. I've been down here 5 years, but it is nice to get a New Yorker on once in a while. I'm a native New Yorker. You're a native New Yorker. You're from Long Island. I'm from the upstate central New York area. It is good to get a little New York flavor on these airways once in a while, so it's great to have you on.
Absolutely, and I'm sure there's a bunch of people that are rolling their eyes right now. A lot of Yankee on the air. Well, just give us a minute, will you?
Exactly. Give us a minute, folks. I think you're going to be entertained by this. All right, the 30 for 30 comes out tomorrow. I had a chance to take a look at it today. I know you saw some of it today. And it really tells the story of WFAN Sports Talk Radio in New York City. It began in 1987, and you know, it really tells the story about how sports talk radio really evolved, and really the two guys that I think we can thank most for sports talk radio being what it is today are Mike Francesa and Chris Russo. Now, they're from Long Island. You're from Long Island. You grew up as a kid in Long Island. You ended up working at WFAN. You know both guys pretty darn well. Talk to me about the legacy that Mike and the Mad Dog, Mike and Chris, has left, not only in New York City, but around the country in terms of sports talk radio.
It really is amazing, and I've never seen a legacy grow like this, guys, in this business in the manner that theirs had. And I know it was important to me, and I know it was important to you, and there was a lot of people that were in sports talk and were on TV and doing radio that loved Mike and the Mad Dog. You'd find them as you sort of weaved your way in and out of the business, but I never realized the impact that it had to so many people, and then also the lasting impact on this business. And you know, part of this 30 for 30 kind of details how, you know, without those guys, as you mentioned, you know, we don't have the first take shows of the world. You know, we don't have this debate genre, and right. All of it started with them. So the legacy is so unbelievably strong, and I'm really, really happy that everybody now who gets a chance to watch this on national TV knows or will be able to take a look at how important this was, because you know, I never really understood that. I mean, I got into the business because of those guys. Sure. And I never really understood that it meant so much to so many other people. And it's really cool to see that. And they're more popular now than they were when they were on the air. I firmly believe that. And when these guys in 2008, when they went off the air, they've grown in popularity, I think, because there's been nothing like them since, because they were that good when they were on the top of their game.
Greg, a couple of things I didn't realize that the documentary pointed out was, number one, WFAN, when they first started, they lost a lot of money in their first few years. And number two, Mike and Chris coming together, that was basically a forced marriage between the two. And it was highly competitive between those two. And I think that's what fueled their show for so many years.
Yeah, and they really did things foolishly in the first couple of years. And they would fly in hosts to do shows on the weekend. They'd fly in update anchors to do updates on the weekend, and they would pay people like crazy. They had no idea what they were doing. They were hemorrhaging money. The station was going right down the toilet, and the combination of Mike and Chris and then getting Imus to come over and do mornings really saved things. And Mark Mason, who was a guy who helped launch the station we worked at in Pittsburgh, he was the guy that put them together and said, you know, what the heck? Let me just try this thing.
Yeah.
He always tells the story, and I'm sure he does at some point in the documentary, when he was driving home that first day, he said, I made a terrible mistake. I really messed this up. Home and talked to his wife and said, you know, this is absolutely terrible. But the reason why it works is the fact that those guys could not be any more different. And, yeah, they had their bumps in the road, and I would sit in that WFAN newsroom and watch them not talk to each other for 2 months straight. And I couldn't believe that, you know, off the air they never say a word to one another, and then when the mic went on, it was music. It really was like two guys at the height of their games playing their instruments, which were their voices talking about sports.
Yeah, and I really think they captured the passion of New York sports. Don't you think, Greg? I mean, by nature, New York sports fans, we're passionate, we're loud. I'm a loud guy, you're a loud guy. That's just where we're from. That's just the nature of where we're from. And if you went into any sports bar or any bar in New York and two guys were talking about sports, it would sound a lot like Mike Francesa and Chris Russo arguing, right?
Well, yes, but nobody sounds like Russo. Let's get Russo. Weirdest voices in the history of the world. But I always say that to people that want to get into the business, you know, and they say, oh, I don't know if I have that radio voice. I said, well, I think one of the most talented guys to ever do it has the worst radio voice ever. But, yeah, I mean, to your point, without a doubt. I mean, they're loud, they're cocky at times. Mike is one of the most pompous people on earth. But, you know, what they are on the air is what they are off the air. And I think that is something that's vitally important, and they somehow, even though, you know, as they got bigger and richer and more popular, they somehow were still able to relate to everybody that put them on. They were also a classic example of, you know, a lot of people couldn't stand them, but they were there every day because they were that compelling, they were that good, and you couldn't miss anything that happened on the show.
We're talking with Gregg Giannotti from CBS Sports Radio. He's the co-host of the Gio and Jones Show, nationally syndicated radio show. Former teammate of mine at Sports Radio 93.7 The Fan in Pittsburgh, one of my best friends. And, G, you were there. You worked at WFAN as a producer. You did get some on-air work there. You do pop up from time to time on that station. Heard you a couple days ago with your buddy and one of my favorites, Joe Badingo. Take me back to what it was like working there, being in that building with Mike and Chris. You mentioned the fact that they went a couple of months without talking to each other except for on the air. There was at times a lot of tension there, but you mentioned it when the red light went on and it was time for them to do their show. They made magic. What was it like for you meeting them, getting to know them, and working with them?
Oh, I was in awe. I showed up there as an intern, and I just wanted to be a part of it and be around them. And Astoria, Queens, where the studio was for all of the Mike and the Mad Dog years, was a total dump. So you'd walk in there, it was in a sub-basement. The ceiling tiles were disgusting and waterlogged. There were cockroaches. And it sounds crazy, like I'm exaggerating, but I'm not. It was a radio station that built $55 million a year, and still was a mess. So, you know, you walk down there, it doesn't feel like an environment where you're going to meet your heroes, and there they were. And I remember being very quiet as an intern, and the first time that I had an interaction with them, and you know John Sterling, the play-by-play voice of the New York Yankees, they loved when John Sterling made mistakes on the air.
Right.
So it was my job as the intern that day. It was a Yankee day game. It was my job to get the Yankee highlights. And John Sterling made a big mistake where he thought a home run was a home run. It wasn't a home run because it was caught. And I just said, you know what? I'm going to be the guy that tells Mike and Chris about this. So in a break, I said, excuse me, guys, you might want to hear this. And I called them over to my computer. They didn't know my name. I remember Dog putting his arm around me, Mike leaning over the computer, and I'm sitting here in my titles, playing this audio for them. And then they both crack up. And they're like, good job. What's your name again? What's your name?
Giannotti, where are you from, Giannotti? Long Island. I'm from Long Island.
Yeah, oh, really? It's unbelievable. From that point on, and then and then I've had many experiences afterwards. And, quite honestly, and I hope this doesn't sound too negative, but I kind of like the days when I didn't know too much about the two of them,
Yeah.
It's like when you get to know your idols and the people you look up to in the business.
Yeah, once you find out how the sausage is made, it's not as impressive. Yeah, I know. I've had that happen to me too. I know where you're coming from.
Yeah, because there was, just a couple of things. Like, when the Mike and the Mad Dog breakup was because Dog left for Sirius. And
right.
I remember in the last couple of weeks, Dog and I, you were either a Mike guy or a Dog guy in the newsroom. So, there was you were either on Mike's side, you're on Dog's side. It was very strange. And Dog decided that I was going to be a Dog guy. And I was, one of the people he'd always talk to. He'd read me the Bruce Springsteen set list before he went on the air like I cared. I was his guy. And in the last couple of weeks before he left, he basically, he was dishonest to all of us and said that, nothing was going on. And he made me print out an article that one of the local media reporters had written about him leaving. It told me straight to my face it wasn't true. And then a couple of days later, he bolted, and then we never heard from him again. So, it's kind of, I think back to this 30 for 30 thing, and there's a lot of emotions that I think about. And, one of the things is, they probably should still be together this day, doing shows.
Well, yeah, you mentioned it. They break up in 2008. Mad Dog gets his own channel on Sirius satellite radio. Mike continues to do afternoon drive at WFAN solo. He's going to be leaving December 15th is his last day, and then he's done. There's a lot of talk, a lot of rumor and innuendo that those two actually might get back together. Would you like to see that? And do you think after all these years they can put their egos aside and make it work?
The answer to both those questions is no.
Okay.
I don't want to see it at this point because to me, what's done is done. They haven't been together now going on almost 10 years. If they had never broken up, I'd still love them doing shows. Just think that, it's what they accomplished over those 19 years needs to stay there. And I think they feel the same way, too, about it. And also, quite frankly, if they did a full-time venture together, there's no place on earth that could pay the both of them at the same time.
Yeah, that's a good point. That's a good point.
The way that this business is going nowadays, there's not as much money as there used to go around. So, back when those guys were billing what they were billing at WFAN, it was an easy call. But, at this juncture, with what they command, what they would work for, to do a full-time show, they wouldn't be able to pay him. So I really think, Mike makes millions right now, and I think if there's a two-man show that replaces him on WFAN, I'd be surprised if those two people split $1 million. That's how far we've come in a year or so.
We're wrapping up with my buddy Gregg Giannotti from CBS Sports Radio, co-host of the Gio and Jones show, nationally syndicated radio show. He and I used to work together in Pittsburgh at Sports Radio 93.7 The Fan. Greg, when you look back on your experiences at WFAN and being there during the Mike and Mad Dog era to where you are now, you're co-hosting your own nationally syndicated sports radio talk show, which I think is awesome, by the way, and I can't congratulate you enough for that. When you look back at it all, what will you remember from your days at WFAN, and what did that station, and particularly those two guys, Mike and Chris, what did they mean for your career?
I think it's easy to say they were the true inspiration and toss that around. But they were, and I have evidence to back that up. So, these guys, I went up to Ithaca College in upstate New York in 2001, and I was a big WFAN listener, and I, at that point, could not get them on the radio because it was too far away from the city. It was before streaming had happened, and on the internet, they didn't have streaming at that point, so I was without them. I was without the station. I was without connection to New York. Shortly after that, the Yes Network, the Yankees TV network, put them on television. I was a music major at Ithaca College. I was going to become a music teacher. When they put them on TV, the Yes Network put them on TV, I started cutting my classes, my music classes at Ithaca College, sitting around watching those guys. and I wasn't really happy up there, and I was questioning my path. And I looked at the TV one day, and I remember this like it was yesterday, and I said, I want to do that. I want to do what those guys are doing. So I quickly started enrolling in some communications classes, transferred back to Long Island, to Hofstra University as a communications major. I got an internship at WFAN, and the rest is history. And it's all because those guys did what they were doing, and it was so inspirational that I felt like I had to follow in their footsteps. So, I mean, being the true inspiration to give this thing a shot is really what they mean to me still to this day.
Gregg, great stuff. Great having you on the show. It was an honor and a pleasure to work with you for the brief time I did at Sports Radio 93.7 The Fan. I could not be more proud of what you've accomplished. I consider you one of my good friends in the business, and all the love, bro. Thanks for being here, man.
I've got Dog here real quick. You want to talk?
Yeah. Well, folks, a special treat. Christopher Mad Dog Russo is joining us here on the radio. Chris, congratulations on the 30 for 30. You have to be excited about it. It's telling the story about you and Mike.
Good evening, everybody. How are you today? Jon Burton on Line 5, doing his thing. He's down in Nashville, Tennessee. Big Predators fan. How do you get to work? How do you do it? Do you drive?
Yeah, I drive. What do you take, the subway?
How do you get to Johnny? Listen, pal, love you. Absolutely love you, buddy. You're doing a tremendous job down there here. I got several friends down there in Tennessee. They put you on constantly. That's all I hear about. Jon Burton.
That's wonderful. Gregg, is Mike there? Is Mike Francesa there by any chance? Can I talk to Mike real quick?
Hello?
Mike Francesa, it's Jon Burton up here in Nashville. Congratulations on the 30 for 30. I'm really excited for you.
I don't know who you are. I don't know where you're calling me from. We're doing an event here, Dog and I, and they put me on the phone. And wait a second, who is this? Who am I talking to?
I'm sorry to bother you, Mr. Francesa. If you could put Gregg Giannotti back on the phone, that'd be great. But congratulations.
Here's Gregg in Long Island. He's now back on the phone.
G, you're the best. I love you, man.
So love is mutual. It always will be. All in me, and enjoy the rest of your show tonight.
All right, take care, Gregg. That is the one and only Gregg Giannotti. Folks, he's simply the best. The 30 for 30 airs tomorrow on ESPN. It's called Mike and the Mad Dog. I definitely encourage you to check it out. We'll take a break, come back with more right after this.